All right, welcome back for part 4 of 3 dot, or not 3, but unit 4.1.5, cams in motion. I don't remember the number. 4 dot, where's that? 4.5, cams in motion. So this is part 4. In the first video, we talked about how to bring in your items into Inventor. The second video, we showed how to create the cam itself. Our third video, we went on how to create all the constraints. And now in our fourth video, we're going on to how to create a motion graph based off of our information. So first thing you need to do is create a chart, like so. All right, so we're gonna do it in increments of 45 degrees. Everyone should get the exact same answer because we all made the same cam. But when you guys get into your Automata projects later on, you're gonna have to create this for your portfolio. And since everyone's gonna have different types of cams made for their project, at that point, no one's will look the same. But this is a good starting point. So we're gonna go back to our Inventor and we're gonna look at how the height is when it's at the top and at the bottom, based off the angle of rotation. So let's go back to our Inventor and we're going to look at this right now. It is at an angle of 0. So looking at the bottom of the follower, I'm going to measure that. And for the purposes of this assignment, let's stay to the nearest line instead of guessing. So our ruler is broken into eighths. So we're going to keep it in eighths. Okay. While most rulers are broken down into 16ths, we're just going to measure in eighths. So we got the 1/2 inch would be 4/8, yes, and the next line up would be 5/8. So for the bottom of our follower at 0 degrees, okay, I would write 5/8. 5/8 inch, okay? And for the top of our follower, it is just below 5 4/8. So it's going to be 5 and 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 5 3/8. So every line represents an eighth. So that is our measurements at 0. At 0 degrees, you should have 5/8 at the bottom of the follower and 5 3/8 at the top of the follower. So now we go over here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And we're going to change our angle to 45 degrees. So we've changed it 45 degrees. Now let's go back in and measure our follower. Okay. So there's 4/8, there's 5/8. We're a little closer to 6/8 now. I would say we're like in between. So if we wanted to break those into 16ths, we could, but for the purposes of the assignment, let's just assume we're at 6/8 now. So this would be 6/8 for the bottom of our follower. 6/8, okay? And then for the next one, come back up here, we are now at 5 3/8. That doesn't make sense. Let's bring this back to 0 and see what happens. Okay, so there's not much. Here is our at 45 degrees, and we're going to do another one. And now we're just above it. So using our ruler, maybe we should break it down into 16ths if we're using the 1.5. So let's do it in 16ths instead. 16th, if it falls on the line, it would be 1/2 of an eighth or whatever that breaks down to. And then if it's in between a line, we'll go there. So let's start back at 0 and we'll go from there. 0. So at 0, okay, if this is 4/8 and this is 5/8, all right, and this is in between 5/8, I would say we're closer to 5/8 than we are the 16th. So we're going to leave that one at 5/8. And then our top of the follower is still pretty close to 5 3/8. Okay, so let's change this to 45 degrees. And once we do that, we are now above on there. So let's change this. So this would be 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, and this is 4/8. So if we broke this into 16ths, it'd be 1/16 would be halfway. This would be 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, 7/16. All right, so we are 5 7/16. 5 7/16. Okay, and if we go back down here to the bottom, we are now at, instead of 5/8, that'd be 5/8, we are closer to the 4/8 doubles, so that'd be 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16. So we would be at 11/16. And now let's do 90. Okay, we're going to change it to 90. Double click. We're going to do 90. So now we're at 90. Now let's look where we're at. We have 4/8, which if we double it into 16ths, we don't really do that if it doesn't fall in there. But we got 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. So at 90 degrees, our bottom is at 6/8. Okay, and our top is at 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. So 5.5 inches. Okay, 5.5. Okay, and then we're going to keep on going. So let's do the next angle, and that would be 135 degrees. And we just went back down, and now we're at, if we did 4/8 and we kind of round up, okay, we've been rounding up basically. So we got 5, this would be 5 8/16. So this would be 5 7/16 here. And we're kind of rounding up just because we have to. Our ruler is not that accurate. So 5 7/16. We're going to go ahead and plug that in. So that's the height of our top, 5 7/16. And then our bottom is coming out to, interesting angle there. Okay. Where are we at? 5 7/16, and the bottom is 4/8, 5/8. So that'd be 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16. So we would be at 11/16. Now let's do 180 degrees. 180, not 1,810, 180. Okay, so now we're at 180, and we are at 4/8, and that'd be 5/8. So 5/8, and our top, I will bet you, is near 5 3/8. 5 and 1, 2, 3, 3/8. 5 3/8. Okay, and since we're using the hexagon, if we continue on with this, right? It is a symmetrical object, all different ways. And so we've had this pattern now. 5 3/8, 5 7/16, 5.5, back down to 5 7/16, back down to 5 3/8. Same here, 5/8, 11/16. Did I really 6/8? Is that what I did? 3/4 inches, okay. 3/4 inches, all right. 11/16, and then 5/8. So we're doing this up and down. So if we did it again, let's look at 225, and we should be back at 5 7/16 and 11/16. And that's just because of the object that we have here. but let's do 225. And we have, this would be 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16. All right, so we're at 11/16, like I guessed, and we should be at 5 and 7/16. 5 and 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, and we're past it, so we're rounding up to that 7/16. Okay, so 5 and 7/16, and then so on. If you had a different one, I would encourage you to keep on going, but we can know exactly what it's going to be by rotating this again. So it would be 5.5 at 270. It would also be 6/8 or 3/4 for those of us that do math, I guess. And then we go to 5 and 7/16 again, 11/16, and then at 360 we would be back at 5 and 3/8 and 5/8. Okay, so that's what your graph would look like. So now we're going to go ahead and plug those in, excuse me, to our into our Excel program. So let's go ahead and do that. In Excel, you're going to create easy graph, nothing crazy, and it'll just be angle. Underneath that, we would have the height of the top. So I'm going to do height top, height bottom. And then I'm going to go through and plug that in. So we got 0, 45, 90, 135, 190, tab, 135, 180, 225, and so on. And as we're plugging these in, we're then going to plug in the numbers that we recorded, which you all should have the same numbers for now. But when you go to do this for your project later on, it will be different. So you have 5 and 3/8, 5 and 7/16, 5 and 7/16, 5.5. 5.5, and then 5 and 7/16, and 5 and 3/8. So then it would eventually do this and end back at 5 and 3/8. And then we'll do the same down here. So we got 5/8. We have, oh, I don't want 5/8. And we want to format this to be measurements. Format. And this is going to be a number. And all these rounded into decimal forms for us, so that'll work out. 11/16, 3/4, 11/16, 5/8. And then that will repeat itself. Just like that. So those are your objects, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to box these in all borders. And then the next thing we would do is highlight all of this information. Up here we're going to do insert, and down in the bottom we're going to create a scatter chart. For me, I'm going to use this. We could do this. this might work as well. So either one you can use. I would recommend using the dots and either doing with straight lines or do it this way. But those would continue on just like that. But we get this up and down with your cam. And since it's such a small cam, there's not a lot of rotation. Okay, it's just going to kind of bump up and down a little bit. And that's one of the things we can do with our cam. And then what we're going to do is add. We're going to access titles. And then make sure you label these correctly. So this would be the height of the follower. And this would be the angle of rotation. And looking through that, we have our lines comparing the graphs. And we are not going to do part 2, so do not worry about this part. This pretty much ends that unit. The idea is that by the end of this unit, you could at least draw a cam, put it into Inventor, constrain it to be able to run through with the ruler, because later on you guys will create a program for your actual project. They'll look like this. So what we'll do is we'll drag this over, and to show that you have completed this assignment to the sub, so he knows, or he or she, my bad, knows to move on. All right, you need to turn this in, and so go up to File, Print. You should be able to see PLCW and PLCW Lexmark and print that out. But everyone's chart for this should look exactly like this. Okay, yours might be different later on in your project though, or it should be different. All right, so other than that, make sure you complete the assignment. If you have questions, talk to each other, and I will see you for the next assignment, which would be Unit 5, and we will continue on from there. Cam dimension drawings. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to go over. If you have an opportunity, you can look through these PowerPoints here. So creating drawings in CAD, cam dimension drawings. Polar graph paper allows you to draw out a cam. All right, like I said, cam dimension drawings, that's how we built those. Assembly constraints would be a PowerPoint. Creating drawings in CAD would also be a PowerPoint. And I will make something for that as well. There will be a test on the subject. We're going to do a test on creating drawings and assembly constraints, as well as just some of this stuff here, like what is a plane used for, what is the purpose of a pair cam, a centric cam, things like that. So it's not going to be a large test, since this is literally one activity, since you have been back from winter break, but there will be a test on the subject matter. And with that, have a good day.